Welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, where healing meets awakening. I'm Amanda M. Dodd, your guide on this transformative journey. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Let's transcend together. Hello, soulful seekers. How are you? Last episode, I said that I would come back and talk to you about some of the more recent things that I have been experiencing. And this is one of those moments that never in my life did I think I would be this as an adult and doing these things. Mm-mm. So this is wild. It's just wild that I almost don't even know where to begin. um, so far, you know that I had mediumship from the time that I was a child, and I've had to learn to grow with that, to be with that. In terms of the origin story of a medium, we just finished part 4 last week, and we still have a long way to go for me to continue sharing different experiences that I've had so that you can see more likely than not, you've had them too. And maybe not as vivid as some of mine, but you've definitely had some of your own that are vivid for you and really valid experiences. And I'm doing this so that you can begin to see things from a different frame than perhaps society has shown you or that you knew could be possible, so that you can better be with your gifts and develop them more and integrate them. These are parts of you that are part of you. They have been there from the beginning, and they will always be there. And the more that you can come to your wholeness, the happier, the more congruent, the more pleasant life can be, the more resourced you will be. So that is where I am with that. When I said I would share what I've been going through, I'm not even sure fully where to start. I guess. Okay, well, here's where we'll start. There is a point later on where I do accept my mediumship abilities and I come to a place of practicing with them. And I get quite good at it, and it's almost a little scary at times. And because it's a little scary and I get quite good at it, I felt the need to move away from it at that time because I knew that, one, I didn't have the level of healing that I needed in that moment. I was not mentally, emotionally, physically healed from childhood, from life, and that was going to affect my readings. But also, I didn't want to be a person that enabled people to give their power away, which can happen within mediumship and within the holistic fields. I like to say it's probably more prevalent than we get to talk about sometimes. And it is really important that when you're finding and working with intuitives or mediums or holistic practitioners, that you're getting the ones who are encouraging you to maintain and hold your power. And they're not taking your power. They are not taking credit for your healing that you are doing, that they are just potentially facilitating or prompting. Right. Because when you're going to these sessions, you are doing the work, you are co-creating. And it's very, very important that you know that. And so within mediumship, I was getting to a point where my name was traveling by word of mouth very, very quickly. People were having outstanding experiences with a particular service that I was offering. And as fate would have it, we were also moving around that time. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm going to shelf being an intuitive psychic reader, the whole empath thing for a while, and I'm just going to try to focus on something else. Within my family, there was a lot of trauma at that time. And so what I was deeply aware of was that I was having PTSD, emotional flashbacks, and I was raising a child who was traumatized. And so not only did I have PTSD, but there was also like a secondary kind of caregiver burnout and PTSD thing that was happening. And I began looking around for resources to better take care of myself, because as much as I love the intuitive and the spiritual realms, I definitely needed something more at that time. And that's when I came across Richard Grannon. Richard Grannon is a trauma NLP narcissistic healing coach. Basically, he helps you to move beyond your trauma bonds and narcissistic relationships and understanding the whole dynamic of that world. The narcissistic abuse wasn't coming from my spouse. It was actually coming from other places that I don't want to name. But it was unexpected, and so it was a little different and adjacent. And it was hard to fully recognize. And so finding his videos on YouTube was immensely helpful for me. And so at one point, I ended up taking one of his courses, and his course was, I want to say, oh my God, he's had so many now that it's hard to tell. I think it was actually called Healing from Narcissistic Abuse. And within that program, he had a lot of coaching, a lot of teaching you various concepts and things like that. But then also there was hypnosis laced in. And at that point, I didn't know how much hypnosis I had experienced in life before, or how much I would experience after. But it was very effective for me. And so what began to happen was in that time, I began to heal and I began to change and I began to have more boundaries. And what I realized was I didn't have enough boundaries in my spiritual work. And I didn't want to go into that work being codependent. I didn't want to have people reliant on me in a way for their access to their spirituality when they could be doing it themselves, or find ways that are more empowering to do. And so I decided, what if I become a coach? I want to take coaching. I want to continue to improve myself. My spouse, being active duty military, had his GI Bill post 9/11 for his service that I could use to go and get an education. And my goal initially was not to fully become a coach. It was more, let me resolve my issues. And this is how you know this happens every single time I have gone after a healing modality, is let me heal this for myself. And then what happens is I fall in love with the modality. I have breakthroughs and then I want to share them. And it's like, oh, let me bring this out into the world because other people need this too. Which is saying something, because, if I'm talking about it, then it's something that I actually had profound healing and results with. I won't just stand behind anything. There have been plenty of modalities that I no longer use and walked away from because I didn't get what I needed from them. Or maybe I'm using them in a specific way where it has an application where I know is going to be helpful. So I found a great coaching course. It's very complete, and that was from the integrative. So it was a integrative healing arts. No, it was not. It was the Mind Body Wellness Practitioner Certificate Program from Southwest Institute of Healing Arts. Short, we call it SWIHA. And I didn't know I would very quickly become an avid SWIHA fan and student. I'm hoping that one day soon we'll have Casey Miller, who is the founder, CEO, brainchild who developed this beautiful school, come on and talk to us about some of her experiences with trauma and transcendence. Because without her having faced some of that school wouldn't exist, and I wouldn't be who I am, most certainly. In any case, within that program, there was a small introduction, 100 hours of hypnosis. I was a little reluctant. Isn't it funny sometimes how we can be a little reluctant, especially when something's going to be good for us? It's like that moment before you need to take medicine, when there's like that hesitation. But you know that you need to, and so you have to push through it. And that's how I feel about hypnosis and my journey with hypnotherapy thus far. Because I'm very skeptic. I'm fairly logical minded. I like to think about all of the ins and the outs, and if I let myself, I have a rampant ability to overthink. I don't let myself do it anymore. But it was definitely a natural ability that I'd had. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to take this mind body wellness certificate. I'm going to learn some amazing things. Goodness, some of them, well, the mind body focus, absolutely. So that's when I learned to become a mindfulness practitioner, learning all about mindfulness, meditation. I also took the ordained minister spiritual studies part within that program. So I learned about well, becoming ordained, but then also working with various things. So I have the ability to create ceremonies, to be a celebrant of life, whether that's a wedding or someone is close to passing, they need an advocate. I have all of those skills available, and you learn really deep skills about how to hold space for someone in any situation that they are in. And then what I went there for was the coaching. And I want to say, was it like 200 hours of coaching right off the bat or something like that? And that was everything. That was what I really wanted, because I looked at Richard Grannon and I liked his abilities. I liked the way that he communicated and how he could more cohesively be emotionally intelligent in a way that I was not yet. And so that was the goal. And as I worked my way through the program, the coaching was everything I wanted and more. And then also the hypnosis caught me by surprise. And so what's happening is with Swihan, the way that you learn online from a distance, because at that time, I hadn't started it in Boston. We moved to McAllen, Texas, and that's when I started my Swiha journey. So that was about 2016 when I actually went and got these bigger credentials and training. And I was taking a pause from mediumship at that moment and from being an intuitive reader, because the unspoken thing about being an intuitive reader is I was spending so much of my time and my energy outside of myself. I wasn't home. I wasn't embodied. I was reading people, and it was because it was coming from a place of needing safety, which made me an excellent reader, but didn't make me feel like a very healthy, grounded, or embodied human being. And so I was coming up against the pitfalls of that and needing more of that embodiment, more of that presence. And I find that now I can go back and forth. Now I can turn on, reader mode, but then I come back into being integrated, embodied, and whole, and in my full presence with myself. And that's where I like to live from. It's a much better feeling place to live from. And then it allows me to practice other skills and abilities. Nonetheless, I'm very chatty today, as you can see. So from there, when we do assignments with Swiha, you often meet with other students. You have goals and objectives to perform. You're learning a skill. You're exploring a concept. And so I would have hypnosis sessions that I needed to give. One lady that I worked with was for weight loss. She had wanted to lose some weight. And here is the kicker. At that point in my life, I was around 240 pounds. I tried veganism. I tried so many things, living raw and organic only, limiting meat. That didn't work for me. I think if anything, that pushed me closer to diabetes than possibly anything else that I had done, because I didn't have the education about sugar and carbs and how my body in specific deals with that. My body does not deal well with that at all. If anything, I function at my best when I'm more of a ketogenic carnivore type lifestyle, living very low glycemic. But I didn't know that then. And when you attend a lot of different spiritual classes, those are the things they like to teach, particularly in the yoga places, that being vegan is healthier to live organic and to find sustainable things. And it's a beautiful concept, but if you don't look at the nutrition, it can be damaging. So for me, it was more damaging than not. But I was at 240, and I'm one of those people that just going to the gym and physically working out it doesn't work for me. The more I stress my body, the more likely I am to actually gain even more weight. One of those that if I push too much in, the cortisol will spike, the adrenaline will spike. I'll gain 10 pounds just from looking at a treadmill wrong. It's just, call it a subconscious belief if you want, but I have had this happen over and over again, much to my frustration. So I tried working out and that wasn't going so well. In any case, I was at a point where I was resigned to be 240 and I had essentially given up. I didn't anticipate that anything would work for me. I had tried other things and had no results. And it was like a perfect storm of things happening in the best possible way at that moment. So as I was doing the session for this lady who wanted to experience weight loss, and I was just using I wasn't a clinical hypnotherapist at that point. I was just reading from a script and guiding her as a client. She had moments where she'd regressed to some things in childhood, resolved an issue, and began to drop the weight. And for whatever reason, within a week of doing her session, I had also lost a couple of pounds. And the kicker was I knew another lady who'd started a ketogenic lifestyle. And she was someone who I didn't regard as being trying to be very diplomatic here. She wasn't the most motivated, dedicated, or determined. And I knew that if she was getting results, that it had to be something very simple, straightforward, and easy to do and to maintain. And she lost like 30 pounds. And it was in the span of like 3 months. And right at that time, my spouse went away for annual training. I had my stepson to take care of, so it was just him and I for meals. He was relatively easy with food. And so I just thought, like, what do I have to lose for the next 3 months? And I decided to go ahead and try. And that's the thing about hypnosis. It's not, yes, there can be moments when the body absolutely listens to the suggestions, takes them in, and makes the big changes. The other part about hypnosis is it opens the doors that are closed. I was closed off to trying. I was closed off to even thinking anything else was possible. Nonetheless, engaging in a new lifestyle, getting a gym membership, doing all of the things that I went on to do. And essentially where that took me was I had lost, so that took me on a journey. It took me on a journey to lose upwards of 70 pounds. Not only did I lose 70 pounds, I helped my mother. My mother, who came to stay with us in Texas, McAllen at the time, came in a wheelchair. She couldn't even walk. When she got off the plane, flying was immensely difficult. She had so many challenges. She was on lots of different medications for her blood pressure, for thyroid, her thyroid medication she had been on since she'd given birth to me. By that point, it had been 30 some odd years. And so I ended up teaching her how to live this way as well. And she went on to lose 100 pounds and came off all of her medications to include the thyroid medication she had been on from the time that she was pregnant with me. Wild, just wild. And it was at that moment, it's like, whoa, there is actually something to hypnosis and hypnotherapy. And if even just facilitating somebody, this wasn't even me having a session. This was me facilitating someone else's session. If doing that can open doors like this, that's the thing I want to be doing. That's more of what I want to do. And if you'd asked me when I was a child what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would either tell you an advocate like Ally McBeal or a psychiatrist who maybe didn't prescribe medications, but more like a life strategist like Dr. Phil type thing. But I also didn't have the words. I didn't have the words for coach. I didn't have the words for hypnotist or hypnotherapist or NLP practitioner, ordained minister, any of those things. So that was it, that first 100 hours, and I was hooked. And by that point, mediumship wasn't really on my mind until something happened. And I want to get there, but I also don't want to tell this story several times over on this podcast. It is a really profound, important story in my life at this point. Maybe I will, in brief detail. It's interesting. All of this to say that, in any case, when I did the training, I knew I wanted more. I knew I wanted to go back. I wanted to become a clinical hypnotherapist, but above and beyond that, I waited for a very specific program to be available and to be covered within the VA, because the VA has very clear standards and things that they want for when people are using the 9/11 GI Bill and such, to make sure that a good education is going to be had and these people getting trained are going to go out in the world and do something with it. There was a very specific program from Sweha that I'd wanted. And actually, that first program, I finished in record timing. That was a 2-year program. I finished it in 1 year because I loved everything I was doing so much, that I decided to double up my class load, and I really burned through them very quickly. So I loved it. I wanted more, and that's what I knew. There was some business stuff in there, and I had, really started to get a good foundation beneath me. And so when I went into the next program, it took a bit of time for it to line up and be ready. And in hindsight, that was perfect too, because then we had some challenges with my step kiddo that we had to work on. And being full time in school wouldn't have boded well for all of those times. In any case, I went on to then take the integrative healing arts practitioner. And within that program, they had the clinical hypnosis, but also there was a subsection of transpersonal psychology, which is the one that I had wanted. And it was at a weird time when the VA was like reassessing the school for accreditation and whatnot, to approve the program. So I had to wait a little bit for that. And it was worth the wait, because we talked about things like addictions, all of the ways that our nervous system goes into various phases and how to work with that. It was foundational. And there I was wanting to resolve PTSD, and here was this school giving me everything I needed to do it, not just for myself, but then to go out into the world and help other people just like me. And so that is why my company is named Healing Beyond Trauma, because that is where I came from. I came from healing my trauma, and then I wanted to help others heal beyond their trauma too. And so that's why I am here now. Within the clinical hypnotherapy certification, which was another several hundred hours, there was a class called Spirit Releasement Therapy. And the basis of spirit releasement therapy is that, and this is not all hypnotherapists align with this. Even clinical hypnotherapists, they don't all agree on this. And in some ways, it's kind of funny because it's almost like one way or another, mediumship was going to find another way back into my life. Whether it was as a reader or whether it is as I do it now. And I'll get to that eventually. But within that, it was a fascinating course. And what I learned is that sometimes the basis of a client's addiction, especially those people who really struggle with addiction, like the addiction feels like it's outside of themselves, and they've worked on various aspects and they still cannot make the changes, can actually be due to energies within themselves that are not their own. And so within that class, we studied Edith Fiore's, what is that? What is that book? The Unquiet Dead, I want to say. And The Unquiet Dead is all about these case studies of people within regression who either spontaneously began to express and share how they had entities attached. This could be earthbound spirits, could be other things. And it was super compelling. I've never read a book faster. I don't think I've ever read a book that quickly, within, like, a matter of a day and a half. I'd read a portion of it out loud to my spouse. It was so compelling. And I didn't know how I felt about it right in that moment, and it was just like, "Okay, this is a good skill to have, and if it comes up, we'll see what happens." And part of me really wanted to have that experience of, "Oh, I can't wait to help somebody with this." And I did. I did help. So after all of my training, we spent about 5 years in McAllen, Texas. Loved it, was sad to have to leave it. And then we came down here to Ohio in 2019. And then in 2019, uh, life, trauma, weight gain because of trauma all happened. And so I'd had to pull myself out of PTSD for a third time, this time complex PTSD. And I'm still dealing with the aftermath of it. Here we are 5 years later. I'm still working on the weight portion and my cortisol and my nervous system responses, because it's challenging, and while I'm mostly past it, it's just the weight aspect of it, of my body wanting to protect my very vital organs. And, that can be a huge factor as to why we retain weight, is the trauma end of it, because it's not actually lifestyle for me. I tend to eat relatively healthy. If anything, I often undereat, which can be a problem. So it's not always as it appears, is what I'm trying to say. Nonetheless, I did have a client who came because she suspected there might be an attachment. Um, it wasn't a full on understanding, like the client knew on some level, but she wanted to clear her way forward for her health. And her health issues at that time was she had been sick with various types of cancer from the time that she was a child. Ugh. As a medium, one place that I really disliked and tried to avoid was the hospital. Can I just say, loved ones in spirit, earthbound entities, they don't hang around in the cemeteries. It is one of the more peaceful places to go because they don't stay there. They are with their family members. They are in places of significance or where trauma happened, and maybe they're stuck in like a mental low vibration loop. And hospitals and schools are those kinds of places that have a lot more energy to work in that way. This is fun. Give me a moment. Something within me is hesitant to share. It's okay. We're going to work through it. So hospitals were the things that I preferred to avoid because, especially being an open empath and clairvoyant and having all those abilities open and going to see one in the hospital when you're already vulnerable because you're caring about someone. Ugh, it's like being a beacon. Mm-mm. No, thank you. And so I could feel everything happening in the hospital, and I disliked that and wanted to stay away from that. Where was I going with this? I've gotten off track now. Right. She was in and out of the hospital from the time that she was a child. And so there's that element of it, of when we are sick, we're already more vulnerable, but then to be in a place where spiritual, energetically, we don't clear these things as a society. We don't have enough people going and clearing these spaces energetically so that these lower vibrational energies can move on or go to the light or get whatever it is they need. So at some point, she had an earthbound spirit that had attached to her. And this earthbound spirit helped her cope within childhood, but then within adulthood, it was keeping her sick. It was preventing her from living her life because it wanted to perform its role, which it thought needed to happen. In any case, that was a great session. I enjoyed it. It sparked a little more intrigue and interest for me. It occurred to me that I wanted to have more skills with this. And so I went on to find other trainings. And later on, I did find other trainings, deeper trainings that then talked about different kinds of entities. Because in the initial class that I took at SWIHA, primarily covered earthbound spirits. It didn't go beyond that into other things, which I'm currently studying now. And I'm doing that with Laura Whitworth through Soul Center healing hypnosis. And she goes into different energetic parasites, nests of things, earthbound entities, but then also darker forces as well. And I've had my share of experiences as being a medium with some of those. So that aligns to me. That's not going to align to every hypnotist, but what I am noticing now is that there seems to be a surge of hypnotists coming forward to do spirit releasement. I don't know if you've heard of Lara Starr or the Spirit Releasement Academy, but those are a good example of people doing this work. And so, what I'm finding is within society right now, and even people who are not hypnotists are stepping forward to do more exorcism type stuff. It's just kind of wild. So I began Laura Whitworth's program. Oh, goodness. That's a more recent one. I'd taken some smaller things before that, but more recently I began that. And I want to say that when I was in Michigan last time for that conference, I was already enrolled and I've just been taking my time with this class. So it's probably, I don't think it's quite a year. It's not quite a year. That was last fall. But I've been taking my time with this, and it is a very good class. There is a lot entailed, a lot of case studies, and then also there's a practicum portion, just like the QHHT method, the Dolores Cannon style of past life regression that I've also done. In that one, we had 25 case study sessions to do. It's the same for Laura Whitworth. But thankfully, some of my QHHT counts. And so I need to do like 14 of these exploratory sessions to help clear people. So within hers, she does talk about a whole lot of other things. Some of them are dark force entities. Sometimes it's demons. Other times it's other low vibrational attachments. What I find most compelling about the way that Laura does this, though, is that she actually shows you how to rebuild the chakras after there have been infestation or trauma or non-sovereignty. What would that be? Non-sovereignty, if you're not sovereign. I guess for people who've been taken over by these lower vibrations. And so it can cause things like addictions. It can cause depression. People struggling to really get and live and have the healthy mindset that they want to have. It's profound the way these things can interrupt and disrupt our lives. And so, yes, there are sometimes things that go bump in the night. And I wanted to get better and better and better at that. And I had a session with someone in the program to receive, and something about that was really off-putting to me. Not the work so much as it was the individual themselves, and so I kind of stepped back for a moment and took some time to reflect and decided, like, how am I going to move forward with this? And I kind of set it aside for a while, and I moved on to study other things. As you know, I've been doing the Debbie Solera's Galactic Akashic Records. I'm having so much fun with that. I'm about 2 weeks away from graduation now, and then I'll be doing those readings. I went on to do with Judith, I've taken her animal communication class. Judith Wade, if you're local here to Northeast Ohio, she's a great teacher. It's a wonderful class. Great way to spend a day. I've had fun with that. I love learning. I'm going to be a lifelong learner forever. And so I'm always taking and learning and doing something and integrating it into what I do in my own unique ways. And so I'd kind of set it aside for a moment. And now I do offer mediumship development and training. And so I was talking to one of my mediumship development students who's also feeling that call towards exorcism and spirit releasement work, but at a deeper level. And so I was recommending to her Laura's class, Laura Whitworth from SCHH. And we were having a phone conversation as I was driving to the apothecary for the meditation for compassion, compassion with Kuan Yin. And there were supposed to be 3 people there that night. And in any case, I'm having a great conversation with this student of mine, and we're talking about all of spirit releasement and how there's that call for people to come and do this work right now, and that more people are, and some of the things that can happen. And somewhere along the lines, we get into talking about Kuan Yin. And she's like, "Oh, aren't you doing that Kuan Yin meditation tonight?" And I'm like, yes, I am. And then I was, she was talking about how a previous teacher of hers, a mentor that had a large role in her life, also loved Kuan Yin and was working with monks and studying, and they thought she might be a bodhisattva. A very interesting conversation. In any case, there is a portion within SCHH where we do work directly with Kuan Yin and Archangel Raphael, and that's part of the clearing work. And that's something that I love because I've always been that angel intuitive who loves to bring angels into everything I do, whether it's mediumship or hypnosis, that they are present. And so I was telling that, and that was like a big aha moment for her. And that felt really important at the time. And we were both getting, like spiritual goosebumps and stuff while talking, just knowing things for us. As I got there to do the meditation, something had shifted. 2 of the people didn't make it, and the one lady who did still was very oriented in wanting to work on compassion. Now, when I have a group, if it works out that it's going to be just one person, I like to give a little extra. I like to hold space and go a little deeper and see what challenges or changes we can make to help that person. It is one of the ways that I can give back. I'm aware that the work that I do, my sessions can be a little pricey and can be difficult and can be out of the range for some people. And so when that occurs at the apothecary, that it's a group session and an attendee comes for $35, and if no one else is there, that it's an opportunity, and if they would like it, that I can go deeper and we can do a more advanced hypnotherapy session to resolve whatever challenges are coming. And so that's a habit of mine. Take note if you're in Ohio. If you pay attention, you might be able to benefit from that if it's harder to see me otherwise, whether virtually or in person. And so the lady that was there that night very much wanted to work on self-compassion. And there were things within the time that we were talking about what her goals were, what her challenges were, that I was catching little red flags, but I didn't consciously notate it as, oh, this could be this. Instead, I was thinking more, okay, we're going to do a parts therapy session. Maybe we're going to talk to an inner child part that is fragmented or lost or exiled or something like that. And that's what I was preparing for. And that's what I thought was going to happen. And her goals were that she wanted to cultivate more self-compassion, but also there was this fear that I could see within her that she had to keep herself very regimented within her spirituality, or she felt as though she could spiral out and lose control. And that was the first red flag that I'd kind of picked up on. Nonetheless, an inner child part or a part that is exiled can do that same thing. In different terms, people call it different things. In IFS, I think they call them fire extinguishers. There's all kinds of other stuff, right? But that's how I reference it. And so we get to work, and I've got her going into meditation, and tonight's a little different. Tonight's a little more challenging. I'm noticing that things are not going smoothly. I found out after the session that this person typically uses a hearing aid, and that day they'd forgotten it. And they never do. They had come to several other group meditations and had always gone smoothly and well. And today was different, but we didn't get that clear bit of info before we began. That is a second red flag to me. So here I'm getting a client and she's not able to read lips. And I didn't know that she needed to read lips. So we're not having great communication, and there are various points where it seems like it's harder for her to hear me than other times, despite no change in the volume of my voice. We begin to do a little bit of energy work. And as she's resting and settled down, we're in the salt cave. And because we're in the salt cave, something about that salt cave, I promise you, is very activating to my abilities. My spiritual senses, my clairvoyance, my clairaudience, my clairsentience are all very heightened while in the salt cave. And I believe that it is for all of the guests that come to meditate as well. And other people have agreed that yes, the salt cave does amplify these things for some reason. And I don't know if it's just because we're electrical beings and we require, you know, the micronutrients. But in any case, it does. It acts as kind of like a conduit enhancer. And so she's relaxing. We're beginning to work. There's some resistance with finding an inner child part, or I'm starting to suss out what is happening here. And the wildest thing happens, but my clairvoyance was like, bam, wide open. And I can see the client laying there, and then I see this thing stand up and look me directly in the face. This thing had some audacity to it, and I'm just thinking, whew, the cojones on you. But this thing, I never imagined what a demon could actually look like. I don't know why it hadn't occurred to me. I think I thought that if I would ever experience one, and Laura Whitworth has talked about experiencing them, I think I thought that I would experience it as darkness, as a shadow person type energy, because those are things I've experienced before. This was different. This thing looked like a Jim Henson puppet gone wrong. If you were to imagine, the animal puppet on like the Muppets, where he's got like the wild hair and the big expressive eyes and this large mouth. It's just these crazy, wild looking features. That is what this thing was like, but it was dark. It was like a gothic animal puppet looking thing. And I say puppet looking thing because I don't know how to describe the texture of this thing's face. But as I saw it, I could see like all of these creases and wrinkles, and I don't even know how to describe it. It looked like it was made out of almost like some kind of material like texture. And it did have these great big yellow eyes, very like a vomitous type yellow, just really unpleasant. And this thing actually spoke. And I can't repeat what it said to me on this show because I try to keep it clean language. But this thing looked me straight in the face, and I wasn't expecting it. And so I'm kind of looking at it while the client is laying back. And at this point, she has no awareness of this. She's encountering some challenges. So at that moment, she's talking about having tightness in the throat and in the chest and something compressing on her heart. She has this sensation on her heart of tightening. And so she's trying to speak. And I'm experiencing this thing in my face. And this thing looked me dead in the eyes and said, "She's mine." And it swore at me. And I'm just like, "You nasty little Muppet." And at that point, I didn't bother to speak back to it. I just thought, okay, this session is going a little differently than I had planned. Good thing I have some skills, even though I've not fully practiced all of the techniques that Laura gives. We are going to do this. And so immediately at that moment, I just call in all of the angels and Kuan Yin and Raphael and all of the team of higher vibrational beings that I like to work with that want to come and help with this. And we start sussing this thing out. And we traced it all the way up through the chakras. There were points in the session where the client was having that squeezing sensation around her heart, but then also there were 1 or 2 points where this thing like came at me. And I could actually feel the tightness in my heart as well. So I'm energetically working on myself to keep this thing out and from attacking me, as well as managing the client. It's a very involved session. It's probably one of the more involved sessions that I've ever had. And so as this is happening, we're working through various processes. There are several techniques that Laura gives and that I'm running through. And with Laura's script, I feel like there are some places where if you're not a well-trained hypnotist, you could bump into leading language, and so I'm very conscious of that and very careful with that, and so I'm not telling the client everything I'm seeing or experiencing, but instead, I'm saying, "Okay, do this. Now what do you see, hear, feel, notice? What's happening for you?" And there are moments when we are pulling things out of her body, out of her energy, and I'm asking her to take a moment to pause and to look. What do you see there? And she's the one telling me. So essentially, we found a nest. Now, when we have a demonic type energy, they often get in through other things. They can come in through earthbounds. They can come in at various points. And that checked out with her client history as well. She had a phase in life where she went very big into a partying phase, and she partook a lot of alcohol and other substances recreationally, to the point where she had a hard time with it, and she felt like she could spiral out to that if she wasn't very rigid in her spiritual practices, which is that one first red flag that I found really intriguing, because that kind of spoke to it right there. And I didn't catch it right away. I tracked it, but I didn't think, oh, spirit releasement. That's not where we're heading. Um, in any case, as we're clearing it, and she's telling me, the things that she's seeing. And so some of the things that she was seeing were like little gremlin type creatures. Lots of like parasites were being released and removed. And I'm not naming these things. Like, she's using her words to describe things. So I laughed at that. Nonetheless, we're able to remove this thing, and this thing was fighting um, with everything it had. It really was. At one point, it opened up a portal, and it was like trying to call in reinforcements. So I'm working the clients on my left. I'm sitting kind of diagonal, and then there's the wall on the right here. And all of a sudden, I see a portal open up, and I'm like, "Oh no, you do not!" So I'm trying to close this portal while still guiding the client through. Um, Nonetheless, she's fine. She's come through. We were able to release everything, but this was so different than I was anticipating. And while I do often get bits and pieces of people's sessions, like if I'm guiding someone to meet a loved one in spirit, I do catch flashes. I don't always see their loved ones in spirit. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll see pets and things like that. But other times I will just have a knowing that, oh, they've got someone important. It's a male, it's this, it's that, a couple of little details. But I don't bring it up in the session because I don't want to taint their experience. I want your experience as you're doing this to be pure, without any of my impressions on it. And then we discuss it later. So I just didn't expect it like this. I didn't expect to actually have this thing look me in the face and try to actually come for me, create sensations within my physiology as well as the client, and then open a portal and essentially try to create chaos. It was wild. And I was so grateful at that moment for being as clairaudient and clairvoyant and clairsentient as I am, to have had the awareness that all this was happening. I promise you, I cleansed and cleared the apothecary salt cave when I was done. And that time it really needed it. I needed to raise vibration in thereafter and make sure that everything was going to be good. The client feels better. Absolutely. She's happier, she's lighter, she's brighter. Immediately after that session, there was a lightness and a brightness in her eyes. And that is a common thing where you see the life coming back in. After we had cleared away the monsters, which is what she had called it, I was able to access an inner child part that was hiding in her sacral chakra. And when I asked, "What are you hiding from?" her inner child said, "I'm hiding from the monsters." And my heart just kind of went, oh, like, well, they're gone now. You can come out. And so the inner child part came out. We got to do the healing work and clean up all of the challenge and difficulty there. And I've seen her since, and she's doing great. But that was a spontaneous spirit releasement session. Wild. Just wild. So that is one of the things that I have been encountering lately, and it was definitely a fire starter for me to get back into finishing my certification with Laura Whitworth and SCHH so that I can do more of this work because when it's bringing myself to its sessions, clearly it needs to happen. So I feel like these things within her knew that I was a potential threat to them because she had come to group hypnosis meditations before and she'd always brought her hearing aids before that. But I think on that night, they had a bit of foresight. I think they knew they were going to be cleared. Rarely, I believe, do entities come and directly speak to you in that way of, no, you can't have this one. I didn't even respond. It was just, okay, now we're going to work. Now I'm invested. Like, you want to fight, you got it. It was just profound. I think I was dumbfounded after the client left of what had actually occurred, what I had just experienced, and shooketh. I was shooketh. And so I'm going to be getting back into completing those sessions. I'm looking for 14 people who want to explore this really beautiful deep modality with me. Some of them are going to be fellow practitioners who are also completing their certification. But then soon I will be actively doing this. So what are some of the things to recognize if you may be encountering this yourself? There can be a lot. Any and all low vibration. If you're not feeling high frequency on a regular basis and it feels insurmountable to maintain, that could be a fairly big red flag. Having to, like the one client, she had to have a rigid spiritual practice so that she didn't spiral out. If you have things that you feel like are going to cause you to spiral out, that might be indicative of forces other than yourself. And so a big part of these sessions is I'm looking and creating sovereignty within the client. And when I say sovereignty, it means that she's the only one driving the car. We don't want anybody else driving the car. We don't want a child part driving the car. We don't want an earthbound spirit driving the car. Nobody else drives the car. You drive the car. That is the safest way. So we're looking for that. And then also it can be a slew of things like addictions, hearing voices, impulsive thoughts, intrusive impulsive thoughts, where they get this random flash of something. And you hear more and more in that about society today, is that people are having these intrusive impulsive thoughts of, just, do this weird self-harming thing. And they don't know where that comes from. That could be where that's coming from, more likely than not. So when you're feeling like you're out of control of yourself, like you can't manage things well, that's another good indicator. What else? I've seen people flinch at the words of actually, and I'm not Christian. I was raised Christian, but I'm also not uncomfortable with working with Master Jesus. And so if I say Jesus' name, I've actually had someone in session who sneered at me. And this was someone who identifies as being Christian. And I was guiding them through a different session. We had a different goal. And I think that was a possible spirit releasement that could have happened there too. I wasn't ready and that wasn't our goal. So I stuck with it, but it can block it. It can block people from their connection to source. And so those people who feel really desolate, really lonely, they feel sorrow, they feel anger, frustration, and all of that, that can be another identifier too. And actually, I think that's why Laura Whitworth began to do this work, is because she too was a QHHT practitioner. And what she was finding was people who couldn't get into their past life, nonetheless get to the higher self, often had entities and energies and parasites and things blocking the way. And Dolores didn't hold those beliefs that lower vibrational energies could attach. I do, because I've had experiences, not just for myself, but witnessing people around me and the whole mediumship side of it. So I've had and seen enough where it's like, oh, there's definitely some stuff. There's definitely some things there. As we continue into the origin story of a medium, I'll share some of those more challenging, uncomfortable experiences that I'd had with you, so that you know you're not alone. And there are very real things out there, and you can do things to protect yourself and to keep yourself safe, particularly within your spiritual practices, which I don't feel like we talk about enough. You'll hear that when I share some of my Reiki journey. I often like to joke about the things that my Reiki teacher didn't teach. That's a class that I want to make. And I'm not the only one who's had that experience, because as we raise our vibration and our light, particularly if you are more vulnerable, you're a child who has psychic abilities, yeah, you're very, very appealing to other things in this world. And there are ways to combat that and to protect from that. Not to leave you on a scary note by any means, but I want you to have all the information to be prepared. So this is where I am at. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. I haven't yet told my mediumship student. I think she'll be floored when we have this conversation. Just wild. Yeah, but the main thing is to see where you have resistance within yourself. If there are things holding you back or getting in your way, that's a telltale sign. Any addictions, that's a telltale sign. Self-isolating, difficulty connecting, feeling alone, cut off from source, cut off from higher self. Those are all signs. Those are all possible flags of, oh, you've got something in the way. You got something holding you back or trying to take control of the car, kind of deal. What else? It's not scary. I promise you that. It's not scary at all. It's not scary to experience. It's not scary to go through. It's very gentle. Very, very gentle. And the improvements after are big. Being able to actually feel like you're in control and sovereign and whole, because we will rebuild the chakras, clearing any damage that's been done. When Laura talks about this, maybe one day she'll come on the podcast. I would love that, to see if I could have Laura come on and share from her perspective on why she began this work and what it's been like for her and the benefits and things that she's seen. I'm going to make that a goal for us. We'll see what happens. I'll do my best. But it's amazing. It's profound. And I can't wait to see where I go next, because this life has become some kind of unpredictable. Unpredictable, but at the same time, it's like, well, how could I have become anything else? Of course, this makes sense. So that is where I am. That is where I've been. That's what I've been doing. And I'm still working through the certification process, but then I will be offering those deeper sessions. I do offer it now, but I don't offer it as the CHH certification. It's just spirit releasement currently, and then the additional trainings that I've taken. And so since then, I've actually been corresponding with another hypnotist in Canada, and that's been very fun. And so we're exchanging advanced energy clearing techniques and things like this too. And maybe, I don't know. I'm not going to make a promise about next episode. We'll see. We'll see what wants to come up. But I did also have another personal experience on a different level with an entity in my home. I may share that with you at some point. That one was more recent, and actually had Darren come over and help me. You remember Darren? He was on a previous episode. That was wild too. So I've been on a journey, to say the least. In any case, let me know where you are, what's been happening for you. What was your biggest takeaway from hearing my experience? And this experience happened roughly 3 weeks ago now. What was this like for you? What was your biggest takeaway? What did you learn? As you hear this tonight, I will be at the Creative Apothecary in the Soul Cave, and we are working on quantum jumping. Quantum jumping is all about perspective and then stepping into a higher vibrational outcome or possibility. Um, it's profound and it's fun. We will see who shows up. There may be a lucky contestant who ends up being alone and gets a deeper session. We shall see. But for now, bright, bright blessings. I'm wishing you safety, serenity, and peace. And I'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you for joining us on this transformative episode of Trauma and Transcendence. Your stories matter. I would love to hear them and from you. Connect on our website, healingbeyondtrauma.com, or drop me an email at amanda@healingbeyondtrauma.com. Remember, healing is a journey we take together. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired. This is Amanda, wishing you bright blessings.